"I'll be right back, Dad. Just going to get some gas." Those were the last words Dacara Thompson's father would ever hear from his 19-year-old daughter. Simple words. Ordinary words. The kind exchanged in households across America thousands of times each day without a second thought. It was Friday, August 22nd, 2025. The summer heat in Lanham, Maryland still hung heavy in the air as evening approached. Dacara grabbed her keys, her phone, and not much else. She didn't need much for such a quick errand. Her father nodded, barely looking up from what he was doing. There was no reason to worry, no cause for concern. She'd be back soon. But minutes turned to hours. Hours turned to night. And Dacara Thompson never returned home. What transforms an everyday moment into the beginning of a nightmare? How does a routine trip to the gas station become the first step toward tragedy? For the Thompson family, that ordinary Friday marked the start of a devastating journey no parent should ever have to travel. The security cameras at the local gas station never captured Dacara's arrival. Her car was never found there. Instead, different cameras would later reveal a black SUV and a casual interaction that seemed harmless at first glance. But nothing about that encounter was innocent. What if a simple promise to return home became the last words you ever spoke to someone you love? Say her name. Dacara Thompson. Welcome to Say Her Name, where we tell the stories of Black women whose cases deserve more attention, whose legacies deserve to be honored. Today, we're sharing the story of Dacara Thompson, a young woman whose gentle spirit, quiet determination, and dreams of helping others were cut short by an act of violence that shocked an entire community. If you believe these stories need to be told, please like, share, and subscribe to support this channel. These aren't just stories. They're lives that mattered, dreams that deserve to flourish, and truths that must be acknowledged. Where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments below. Dacara's story begins long before that fateful August evening, in a close-knit family where love and respect were foundational values. Before we explore the person she was and the life she lived, we need to understand that behind every headline, every statistic about missing Black women, there's a human being with hopes, dreams, and people who love them deeply. This is not just another true crime story. This is about a daughter, a friend, a volunteer who wanted to make a difference. This is about a 19-year-old whose potential was stolen in an act of senseless violence. This is about making sure her name, Dacara Thompson, is remembered not just for how she died, but for who she was and what she stood for. Join us as we trace the final days of Dacara's life, examine the investigation that brought her killer to justice, and explore the painful questions her case raises about safety, vigilance, and the protection of young women in our communities. This is Dacara's story, and it deserves to be told. In the heart of Prince George's County, Dacara Thompson grew up in a home where love wasn't just spoken, it was lived. The modest Thompson house in Lanham stood as a neighborhood landmark, not for its size but for the warmth it radiated. Here, Dacara learned her first and most enduring lesson: community matters. She was the kind of daughter every parent hopes for, her father would later say, his voice breaking with each word. From childhood, Dacara showed an uncanny ability to notice when others were hurting. While neighborhood kids played, she was the one who made sure no one sat alone. Weekends meant family gatherings, community events, or quiet Sundays at church. These weren't just routines, they were the invisible threads weaving Dacara's moral fabric, teaching her that a life well lived is one spent in service to others. Those who knew Dacara best described someone whose power lay not in volume but in presence. She wasn't the loudest voice. She was the most attentive listener. She had this smile, her friend Jasmine recalled, not always on display, but when it appeared, it was genuine. It reached her eyes and made you feel like everything would be okay. Her journal entries revealed depths that surprised even those closest to her. She wrote about injustice, hope, and beauty in ordinary moments. One entry simply read, "Kindness costs nothing but means everything. Today I choose kindness again." Teachers remembered her as the student who stayed after class, not struggling, but hungry to understand more deeply. She wasn't content with surface knowledge, her English teacher explained. Dacara wanted to know the why behind everything. This thoughtfulness extended to how she treated others. Friends recall countless instances where Dacara remembered small details about their lives, asking about a sick grandparent weeks after it was mentioned, or bringing a favorite snack to someone having a difficult day. St. Charles High School wasn't just where Dacara studied, it was where her vision for the future took shape. Her 2024 graduation represented possibility for her entire family, who cheered louder than anyone as she crossed the stage. She wasn't valedictorian or the star athlete, her counselor shared, but she was the student who made the school better just by being there. Her quiet leadership manifested in tutoring younger students, organizing donation drives, and welcoming newcomers. After graduation, Dacara made a choice that perfectly reflected her character. While peers headed to college, she joined Maryland's service year program, connecting young adults with community service while building professional skills. For Dacara, this wasn't a gap year or resume padding. It was a purposeful decision to give back before moving forward. Through the program, she worked with food banks and literacy programs, each placement confirming what she already knew. Her calling was to help others. As her service year progressed, Dacara stood at the crossroads of possibility, carefully considering which path would allow her to make the greatest impact. She was torn between nursing and social work, her aunt shared. Both fields spoke to different parts of her heart. The common thread was clear. Dacara wanted a career where she could help people who felt unseen or forgotten. Her journal entries from this period show someone actively planning for the future. Lists of colleges with strong programs, notes from conversations with professionals, budget calculations for tuition. She approached her future with the same thoughtful consideration she gave everything else. What made Dakara's dreams particularly poignant was how attainable they were. She wasn't chasing fame or fortune. She was mapping out a future of service that was entirely within her reach, a future that would have rippled outward to touch countless lives. In her last journal entry, written days before her death, Dacara wrote, "I don't need to change the whole world. I just need to change the worlds of the people I meet. That's enough." At 19, Dacara balanced on the threshold between youth and adulthood, responsible enough for important decisions, yet still young enough to enjoy simple pleasures. Her daily life reflected this beautiful in-between stage. Friends describe her as the listener, the one they called at 2 a.m. when life felt overwhelming. With Dacara, you could be your whole self, the good, the bad, all of it, and she'd still see the best in you, her childhood friend Marcus explained. Like many her age, Dakara's days blended responsibility and joy. She worked part-time at a local cafe, saving for education while building skills. She volunteered weekends. She spent evenings helping younger cousins with homework or simply relaxing with friends. In the weeks before her death, Dacara had begun spending more time in neighboring areas like Bowie and Waldorf, expanding her social circle through volunteer work and mutual acquaintances. She was, as her father later said, just living life, doing the normal things a 19-year-old does. There was nothing in these everyday activities to suggest danger, nothing to indicate her path would cross with someone capable of unspeakable violence. She was simply a young woman moving through the world with trust and openness, qualities that made her who she was, qualities that should never have made her vulnerable. And this is where the true tragedy lies. Dacara Thompson wasn't taking risks. She wasn't making dangerous choices. She was simply living her life, a life full of promise, purpose, and potential. A life that was about to be cut devastatingly short. August 22, 2025 began like any other summer Friday in Lanham. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Thompson family driveway as Dacara helped her father carry groceries inside. Neighbors later recalled seeing her watering plants on the front porch, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, nodding hello as they passed. Phone records would later show that Dacara texted several friends that morning. Ordinary messages about weekend plans, a new song she discovered, a funny meme shared in their group chat. Nothing in these exchanges hinted at worry or concern. Nothing suggested this day would end differently than any other. Around noon, she made a sandwich in the kitchen while chatting with her father about an upcoming community event. She mentioned needing to pick up application materials for a nursing program she was considering. They talked about dinner plans, normal conversations, forgettable moments that would later be desperately analyzed for clues, for warnings, for anything that might explain what was to come. As afternoon faded toward evening, Dacara realized her car was low on fuel. It was approximately 5:30 p.m. when she told her father she was heading out for gas. She grabbed her keys, her phone, and her wallet, leaving behind her backpack, her journal, and all the small personal items that made her room uniquely hers. Items she clearly expected to return to. "I'll be right back, Dad," she said. Simple words that would haunt her father forever. When 30 minutes passed, her father thought nothing of it. The gas station was only a few minutes away, but perhaps she'd stopped for a snack or run into a friend. An hour later, mild concern began to creep in. He called her cell phone. It rang several times before going to voicemail. He texted, "Everything okay?" No response. By 8 p.m., concern had evolved into worry. This wasn't like Dacara. She was reliable, considerate. If her plans changed, she always let someone know. Her father called again. Straight to voicemail this time. He paced the living room, checking the window with each passing car, expecting headlights to turn into their driveway at any moment. By 10 p.m., worry had transformed into fear. He called her friends, his voice growing more urgent with each conversation. "Have you heard from Dacara? When did you last talk to her? She said she was just getting gas." Each negative response tightened the knot in his stomach. Midnight came and went. Her bed remained empty, her phone unanswered. Her father sat in the kitchen, staring at his own phone, willing it to ring. The house felt unnaturally quiet, the absence of her presence growing louder with each passing hour. By dawn, he hadn't slept. The first light of August 23rd crept through the windows, illuminating a father's worst nightmare. His daughter had vanished, and the ordinary world continued turning as if nothing had happened. But for the Thompson family, everything had changed. Everything. The morning brought frantic activity. Dakara's father called every hospital in the area. "No, sir, we don't have anyone by that name." No admissions matching that description. Each negative response both relieved and terrified him. Family members arrived, setting up an impromptu command center at the kitchen table. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all making calls, checking social media, reaching out to anyone who might have seen Dacara. Her photo was shared in community groups, local businesses were contacted, her usual hangouts checked and rechecked. "She wouldn't just disappear," her aunt insisted, voice cracking. "Something's wrong. This isn't her." By afternoon, the family made the decision they had hoped to avoid. They contacted the Prince George's County Police Department to report Dacara missing. The responding officer took notes, asked routine questions, and explained the process. Yes, they would look into it. No, adults going missing for 24 hours wasn't automatically considered suspicious. Yes, they understood the family's concern. But the Thompsons knew. They knew in that deep, instinctive way families do when something is truly wrong. This wasn't a teenager staying out late or crashing at a friend's house without calling. This was Dacara, responsible, thoughtful Dacara, who had simply gone for gas and vanished. As day 2 without contact stretched into evening, the police began to take the case more seriously. Dakara's phone records were pulled. Her bank accounts checked. No activity since the previous evening. No withdrawals, no purchases, no calls made. It was as if she had stepped out of her normal life and into a void. What the family didn't know yet was that the first crucial piece of evidence had already been discovered. And it would change everything. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source, a traffic camera positioned at an intersection near the gas station Dacara had intended to visit. Reviewing the footage, detectives noticed something significant. Dakara's car never appeared on the camera that would have captured her route to the gas station. But at 5:47 p.m. on August 22nd, a different vehicle caught their attention. A black SUV traveling in the opposite direction. And in the passenger seat sat a young woman matching Dakara's description. Enhanced footage confirmed what the family feared most. It was Dacara. She appeared to be sitting calmly, not visibly distressed. The driver, partially obscured but clearly male, was later identified as 35-year-old Hugo Hernandez Mendez, a resident of Bowie, Maryland. The discovery raised immediate questions. How did Dacara end up in this vehicle instead of driving to the gas station? Did she know this man? Was this a chance encounter or something planned? Further investigation revealed that Hernandez Mendez was a Guatemalan national living in the United States without legal status. He had one prior arrest, a DUI charge from the previous year. Nothing in his known history suggested violence or predatory behavior. Nothing except what the detectives would soon discover. The SUV was registered to an address on Kembridge Drive in Bowie, approximately 15 minutes from the Thompson home. As police prepared to visit this location, they had no way of knowing the horror that awaited them there. With the SUV identified, investigators began constructing a timeline of Dacara's final known movements. Cell phone data placed her at home until approximately 5:30 p.m., confirming her father's account. Her phone then moved briefly toward the gas station before changing direction, corresponding with the traffic camera footage showing her in the black SUV. By 6:15 p.m., her phone signal located to the Kembridge Drive area in Bowie, where it remained stationary for approximately 2 hours. Then, at 8:23 p.m., all signal activity ceased. Her final text message, never sent but found in her phone's drafts folder when the device was later recovered, read simply, "Something's not right. I think I should." The words cut off. Whatever warning, whatever plea for help Dacara had tried to send remained unfinished. Investigators also discovered that Dacara and Hernandez Mendez had 3 mutual connections on social media, suggesting they may have had passing acquaintance through extended social circles. One mutual friend later told police they had seen them speaking briefly at a community event several weeks earlier, though the interaction seemed casual and unremarkable. What happened between that casual acquaintance and the moment Dacara entered his vehicle remains unknown. Did he offer her a ride? Did he create some pretext to gain her trust? These questions haunt the investigation to this day. What is known with certainty is that by the time Dacara's phone went silent at 8:23 p.m. on August 22nd, the Thompson family had already begun their desperate search. As they called hospitals and friends, as they paced floors and prayed for her safe return, Dacara was already beyond their reach. And the truth of what occurred inside that house on Kembridge Drive would soon reveal the full magnitude of the tragedy, a revelation that would shake an entire community to its core. With the black SUV identified and tracked to Kembridge Drive, the Prince George's County Police Department moved with calculated urgency. Detective Marissa Reynolds, lead investigator on the case, assembled a team to approach the residence, not yet with a search warrant, but to conduct what's known as a knock and talk, a preliminary investigation technique to gather information. "We had a missing 19-year-old and evidence she'd been in that vehicle," Detective Reynolds later explained. "At that point, we were still hoping for the best-case scenario, that there was some explanation that she was safe." As officers approached the modest 2-story home on August 24th, they noted the black SUV parked in the driveway. The vehicle matched the one from the traffic camera footage. The license plate confirmed it belonged to Hugo Hernandez Mendez. No one answered the initial knocks. Neighbors reported seeing Hernandez Mendez earlier that morning, but he appeared to have left. One crucial detail emerged from these neighborhood interviews. Hernandez Mendez didn't live alone. He shared the house with at least one roommate. While officers maintained surveillance on the property, Detective Reynolds secured an emergency ping order for Dacara's phone. The last signal had come from within a 100-meter radius of the Kembridge Drive address. This information, combined with the traffic camera footage and the SUV identification, provided enough probable cause for a judge to issue a search warrant. By late afternoon, as the Thompson family entered their 3rd day of agonizing uncertainty, a full investigative team descended on the Bowie residence. What began as a missing person case was about to transform into something far more disturbing. "We entered that house hoping to find Dacara alive," one officer later testified. "Instead, we found a crime scene that told a story none of us wanted to hear." The search warrant allowed investigators to access every room in the house. They moved methodically, documenting everything, following a trail of evidence that grew more concerning with each passing minute. And then they reached the bedroom at the end of the upstairs hallway, a room that would forever change the course of the investigation. The bedroom door was locked from the outside, an immediate red flag to the experienced investigators. After forcing entry, they were confronted with a scene that even veteran detectives described as deeply disturbing. The room itself was sparsely furnished, just a bed, a dresser, and a small desk. But it was the evidence of violence that commanded immediate attention. Blood spatter marked the walls in a pattern consistent with a struggle. The bedsheets were stained and disheveled. A lamp lay broken on the floor. The room told us a story of resistance, forensic analyst Dr. James Whitaker later testified. The victim had fought back hard. Among the most damning pieces of evidence were strands of hair later confirmed to match Dacara's DNA profile, broken fingernails embedded in the wooden floor, and blood evidence that would ultimately be identified as hers. The pattern of blood spatter and the distribution of evidence painted a horrific picture of Dacara's final moments. A young woman fighting desperately for her life. Perhaps most chilling were the personal items recovered from the scene. Dacara's phone was found hidden beneath the mattress. Its screen cracked but its memory intact. Her wallet, containing her ID and bank cards, was discovered in a drawer. 2 pieces of lingerie, later confirmed not to belong to Dacara, were found carefully folded in the closet, suggesting a disturbing pattern of behavior that investigators would later explore. In the bathroom connected to the bedroom, forensic teams discovered additional blood evidence in the shower drain. Chemical testing revealed attempts to clean the room, bleach residue on the floor, recently washed towels in the hamper. These were the actions of someone attempting to hide evidence, to erase what had occurred. Everything in that room told us 2 things, Detective Reynolds stated. First, that Dacara Thompson had been there. And second, that something terrible had happened to her. The medical examiner would later determine that Dacara had died from asphyxiation following blunt force trauma. The evidence suggested she had been restrained, assaulted, and ultimately killed in that room. All while someone else was present in the house. Someone who heard what was happening but did nothing to stop it. As investigators processed the crime scene, they located the roommate, 27-year-old Miguel Santos, at his workplace. Initially reluctant to speak, Santos eventually provided testimony that would prove crucial to the case against Hernandez Mendez. "I heard noises," Santos admitted during his 3rd hour of questioning. "Not like normal noises. Like someone was in trouble." According to Santos, he had been home on the evening of August 22nd when Hernandez Mendez returned with a young woman he didn't recognize. Santos claimed the interaction initially seemed consensual. They were talking, not arguing, as they went upstairs. But what he heard later told a different story. "First it was just talking. Then I heard a loud noise, like something falling," Santos recounted. Then a woman's voice. She was saying, "No," and "Stop," over and over. It got quiet for a while. Then there was more noise. Louder this time. When asked why he didn't investigate or call for help, Santos offered the explanation that would haunt this case. "It wasn't my business. I didn't want trouble." Santos claimed he put on headphones to block out the sounds. He admitted to hearing what he described as struggling for approximately 20 minutes before the house went quiet. Later that night, he observed Hernandez Mendez carrying something wrapped in bedsheets to his SUV. When questioned about this, Santos said he didn't want to know what was happening. "I knew something bad had happened," he finally admitted. "But I was afraid. He told me not to say anything, that it would be bad for both of us if I did." Santos's testimony revealed not just the horror of what had occurred, but the tragedy of inaction, how one person's choice to remain silent had potentially cost Dacara her life. Prosecutors would later charge Santos as an accessory after the fact, though his cooperation ultimately led to a reduced sentence. The roommate's account provided investigators with critical timeline information and confirmed their worst fears about Dacara's fate. It also gave them something else, information about where Hernandez Mendez might have taken her body after removing it from the house. With a warrant now issued for his arrest, law enforcement launched a multi-agency manhunt for Hugo Hernandez Mendez. His photo was distributed to Border Patrol, transportation hubs, and neighboring jurisdictions. His bank accounts were frozen and his known associates contacted. The break came just 36 hours later. A license plate reader on Interstate 95 flagged the black SUV heading south toward Virginia. State troopers intercepted the vehicle at a rest stop near Fredericksburg, where they found Hernandez Mendez attempting to change the license plates. The arrest was without incident. Hernandez Mendez surrendered without resistance, offering no statements beyond requesting an attorney. Inside the vehicle, investigators found a bag packed with clothes, several $1,000s in cash, and a passport, clear indications of an attempt to flee. Most significantly, forensic teams found trace evidence in the SUV's trunk that matched blood samples from the bedroom. This evidence would later prove crucial in connecting Hernandez Mendez directly to Dacara's murder. Within hours of his arrest, Hernandez Mendez was charged with first and second-degree murder. As news of the arrest spread, the Thompson family received the confirmation they had dreaded: Dacara was gone, taken by an act of violence that defied comprehension. "We have the person responsible," Detective Reynolds told the family. "He will face justice for what he did to your daughter." But for the Thompsons, for Dacara's friends, for an entire community shaken by this tragedy, justice could never be enough. Nothing could bring back the 19-year-old with dreams of helping others, whose life was cut short by a chance encounter with evil. As we reflect on this tragic case, I want to ask you something important. Have you ever witnessed or heard something that felt wrong, but hesitated to get involved? The roommate's testimony raises painful questions about our responsibility to one another. What stops people from speaking up when they sense danger? Is it fear, indifference, or something else entirely? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective might help someone find the courage to act when it matters most. Remember, in situations like these, a single phone call can be the difference between life and death. If Dacara's story has impacted you, please consider sharing this video to raise awareness about the importance of community vigilance and the protection of vulnerable young women. Together, we can ensure her story leads to meaningful change. In the stark fluorescent light of the Prince George's County Courthouse, Hugo Hernandez Mendez made his first appearance before a judge on August 28, 2025. Dressed in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed in front of him, he kept his eyes downcast as the charges were read: first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and additional counts of assault and false imprisonment. The prosecution's case was built on a foundation of damning evidence: DNA samples from the crime scene, the roommate's testimony, surveillance footage, and forensic evidence recovered from both the residence and the SUV. The prosecutor described the case as one of the most disturbing examples of predatory violence this county has seen. When the judge asked how he pled, Hernandez Mendez's response was barely audible: "Not guilty." The Thompson family, seated in the front row of the courtroom, remained stoic as the man accused of taking their daughter's life denied responsibility. The judge denied bail immediately, citing both the severity of the charges and the flight risk Hernandez Mendez presented. He would remain in custody throughout the trial process, a small comfort to a family whose loss could never be remedied by any legal outcome. As the case progressed through preliminary hearings, the prosecution revealed that Hernandez Mendez's prior DUI wasn't his only brush with law enforcement. There had been a domestic disturbance call at his previous residence, though no charges were filed. This pattern of escalating behavior raised questions about missed opportunities for intervention, red flags that might have prevented tragedy if properly addressed. The trial date was set for early 2026, with prosecutors confident in securing a conviction that would ensure Hernandez Mendez would never again walk free. But for the Thompson family, justice would always be incomplete. No verdict could restore what had been taken from them. As news of Dacara's murder spread, the community's response was immediate and profound. On a warm September evening, hundreds gathered at Lanham Community Park for a candlelight vigil. The crowd spilled beyond the pavilion area, a sea of flickering lights honoring a life extinguished too soon. Friends shared stories of Dacara's kindness. Teachers spoke of her potential. Community leaders called for action to protect young women. Through tears and embraces, a collective grief transformed into a demand for change. Governor Wes Moore issued a statement that captured the sentiment of many. Today, Maryland mourns the loss of Dacara Thompson, a young woman whose commitment to service embodied the very best of our state. Her senseless death is not just a tragedy for her family, but for every community that would have benefited from her compassion and dedication. We must do better to protect our young people from violence that robs families and communities of their brightest lights. Social media platforms filled with tributes using the hashtag #SayHerName and hashtag Justice for Dacara. But alongside genuine expressions of grief came troubling misinformation, false narratives, and cruel speculation that added to the family's pain. The Thompsons issued a statement requesting privacy and respect, asking the public to focus on honoring Dacara's memory rather than sensationalizing her death. Local schools held assemblies addressing safety and awareness. Community centers offered self-defense classes. Religious organizations hosted prayer services. In death, Dacara had become a catalyst for conversation, her story forcing a community to confront uncomfortable truths about vulnerability and violence. Dacara's murder didn't happen in isolation. It occurred within a broader pattern of violence against young Black women, a pattern often overlooked by mainstream media and underaddressed by law enforcement. Statistics tell a disturbing story. Black women and girls go missing at disproportionate rates compared to their white counterparts, yet receive significantly less media coverage. When they become victims of violent crime, their cases are less likely to be solved. These disparities reflect systemic failures that leave an entire demographic vulnerable. What happened to Dacara happens to Black women every day, noted Dr. Kimberly Williams, director of the Center for Missing Persons of Color. The difference is that most names never make headlines. Most families never get answers. Most communities never see justice. This reality underscores why channels like Say Her Name are vital. They give voice to stories that might otherwise be forgotten. They challenge the narrative that some victims matter more than others. They demand attention for cases that the system too often neglects. Dacara's case received proper investigation and media coverage, but many similar cases don't. For every Dacara Thompson whose killer faces justice, countless other families continue searching for answers, fighting to keep their loved ones' names in the public consciousness. This broader context doesn't diminish the individual tragedy of Dacara's death. It amplifies it, connecting her story to a larger struggle for equality in how missing persons cases are handled and how victims of violence are remembered. Dacara's story contains painful but necessary lessons about safety and prevention. While no victim is ever responsible for the violence committed against them, understanding risk factors can help protect vulnerable individuals. First, the importance of location sharing cannot be overstated. Simple practices like sharing your location with trusted contacts when traveling alone, or using apps that allow real-time tracking during journeys, create safety nets that might make the difference in an emergency. Second, trust verification is crucial. Before entering a vehicle with someone, even a casual acquaintance, ensure others know who you're with and where you're going. A quick text with this information creates a record that could prove vital if something goes wrong. Third, community awareness must extend beyond our immediate circles. The roommate who heard Dacara's distress but did nothing represents a failure we must address collectively. Creating cultures where bystander intervention is normalized and expected could save countless lives. Fourth, we must recognize that predatory behavior often escalates over time. Hernandez Mendez's history of minor offenses preceding this violent crime follows a pattern familiar to law enforcement. Better systems for tracking concerning behavior and providing intervention before violence occurs could prevent similar tragedies. Finally, we must acknowledge that safety education is not about restricting freedom. It's about empowering informed choices. Young women shouldn't need to live in fear, but they deserve the knowledge and tools to protect themselves in a world where threats exist. Though her life was cut tragically short, Dacara Thompson's impact continues. Her family established the Dacara Thompson Foundation, which provides scholarships to young people pursuing careers in nursing and social work, the paths Dacara herself was considering. Local schools incorporated her story into safety awareness programs, ensuring that future generations learn from her experience. Community organizations used her name to rally support for improved missing persons protocols and domestic violence intervention. Perhaps most powerfully, Dacara's memory lives on in the countless small acts of kindness performed by those who knew her, each one an echo of the compassion that defined her life. As her father said at the foundation's launch, "My daughter wanted to help people. Through this work, she still does." The tragedy of Dacara Thompson's death forces us to confront difficult truths about our society and ourselves. Beyond the details of the case lie broader lessons that demand our attention. Lessons that, if heeded, might prevent similar heartbreak for other families. The first and perhaps most crucial lesson concerns community vigilance. Miguel Santos heard a young woman in distress and chose inaction. That choice, to remain silent, to look away, to prioritize personal comfort over intervention, may have cost Dacara her life. How many times do we witness concerning behavior and dismiss it? How often do we sense something wrong but tell ourselves it's not our business? True community safety requires collective responsibility. It means making the uncomfortable call when something doesn't feel right. It means checking on neighbors when unusual sounds emerge from nearby homes. It means questioning situations that seem off, even at the risk of embarrassment if you're wrong. Because the alternative, remaining silent when someone needs help, carries a moral weight too heavy to bear. This connects directly to trusting your instincts. Our bodies and minds have evolved sophisticated warning systems that alert us to danger, that unexplained discomfort, that nagging feeling that something isn't right. Too often, we override these signals, dismissing them as paranoia or overthinking. Dacara may have sensed danger too late, as evidenced by her unfinished text message. Learning to honor those internal warnings, and teaching young people to do the same, could be the difference between safety and tragedy. Beyond individual actions lies the need for systemic change. Hernandez Mendez had previous encounters with law enforcement that didn't trigger adequate follow-up. The roommate witnessed disturbing behavior but had no clear pathway for reporting concerns without direct confrontation. These gaps in our systems, from law enforcement protocols to community reporting mechanisms, leave vulnerable people exposed to preventable harm. We need better coordination between agencies tracking concerning behavior. We need anonymous reporting systems that allow people to flag worrying situations without fear of retaliation. We need improved education about warning signs of predatory behavior. And we need these changes implemented with particular attention to communities where women of color live, communities often underserved by existing safety infrastructure. Finally, we must commit to honoring through action. Vigils and hashtags matter. They keep names like Dacara's in public consciousness. But real change requires sustained effort beyond the news cycle. It means supporting organizations that protect vulnerable populations. It means advocating for policy changes that address systemic failures. It means having difficult conversations about safety with young people in our lives. Each of us has the power to transform tragedy into catalyst, to ensure that Dacara's story leads not just to grief, but to meaningful change that protects others. That is how we truly honor her memory. Dacara Thompson was not a statistic. She was not a headline or a cautionary tale. She was a daughter who made her father proud, a friend who listened when others needed to be heard, a volunteer who believed in service, a young woman with dreams of nursing or social work, dreams that would have led her to touch countless lives with her compassion and care. Her story matters not just because of how it ended, but because of who she was, a bright, thoughtful 19-year-old whose kindness left an impression on everyone she met. A young woman who wrote in her journal that she didn't need to change the whole world, just the worlds of the people she encountered. Though her life was cut short, her impact continues through the conversations her story has started, through the foundation that bears her name, and through every person who hears her story and commits to creating a safer world for young women like her. If this story moved you, please help us continue our mission by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Every share helps ensure that Dacara's name, and the names of countless other Black women, will not be forgotten. Your engagement allows us to bring these important stories to light, to demand justice where it's lacking, and to honor lives that matter deeply. Say her name. Dacara Thompson. Not just today, but every day, in how we protect each other, in how we build safer communities, and in how we ensure that no family has to endure what the Thompsons have endured. That is how we truly honor her memory. That is how we ensure her life, though brief, continues to make a difference.